In ancient Greece, long before marble temples gleamed on sunstruck hillsides, long before philosophers carved the laws of logic into the bones of Western civilization, there was a god who walked among mortals not with thunder, not with spears, not with the cold majesty of Olympus, but with a cup of wine in his hand and fire in his eyes. His name was Dionysus, and he was the most dangerous god the Greeks ever worshipped, not because he sought war, not because he demanded blood, but because he offered something far more seductive: freedom. Freedom from rules. Freedom from identity. Freedom from the prison of your own mind. This is the story of why an entire civilization, scholars, kings, workers, women locked in domestic chains, and men crushed under duty, gave themselves to a god of wine. And why, thousands of years later, his shadow still lingers over every celebration, sacrifice, feast, and flame of human desire. The story begins in the twilight of a Theban marketplace. The sun bleeds into the horizon, turning the sky into a bowl of molten bronze. Horses snort. Merchants pack their goods. But beneath a fig tree, a circle of villagers gather around an old storyteller whose voice was said to be older than the stones. His eyes are pale, almost silver, like moonlight trapped in human form. When he speaks, even the breeze seems to pause. "You want to know why we worshipped him," he whispers. "Why the god of wine held more power over us than kings, than armies, than laws." He leans forward. "Then you must understand his birth. Dionysus was not meant to survive the world. He was born from a forbidden union. Zeus, king of gods, and Semele, a mortal woman whose beauty ignited Olympus with envy. Hera, Zeus's wife, planted a seed of doubt inside Semele's heart. "If he truly loves you," Hera whispered, "ask him to show you his divine form. A mortal cannot survive the sight of godhood." Semele learned that too late. When Zeus revealed his true shape, thunder, lightning, celestial fire, Semele was incinerated instantly. But within her ashes the unborn baby pulsed with divine life. Refusing to lose him, Zeus stitched the child into his own thigh. Months later he was born again. The twice-born god. The god who survived death. The god who knew pain before power. And that, he says, is the first reason the Greeks loved him. For Dionysus was the only god who understood suffering, not from afar but from the inside. As the boy god grew, the world seemed too small for him. Nymphs raised him in forests. Satyrs taught him music and mischief. The vines themselves curled toward him, offering shade, fruit, peace. And yet, every step he took was shadowed by Hera's hatred. He wandered across Asia, across the scorching valleys of Phrygia, across the secret kingdoms of the East. Wherever he walked, vines burst from barren soil. Grapes swelled like jewels. And mortals tasted wine for the first time, watched it shimmer red in clay cups, felt it slide into their veins like warm fire. Wine changed everything. It softened grief. It loosened tongues. It made the poor forget poverty, the wounded forget their scars, the lonely forget their isolation. Wine was not just a drink. It was a key. A doorway. A glimpse of another world. A world where fear dissolved, where joy overflowed, where the soul danced free of the body. And so people worshipped Dionysus not because he commanded them, but because he awakened something in them that had been asleep. The festivals began as small gatherings, shepherds playing flutes, farmers singing hymns as they crushed grapes barefoot in great stone basins. But soon the celebrations consumed entire cities. Athens transformed into a river of torches flowing down marble streets. At the great Dionysia, thousands marched through the city gates, singing, shouting, laughing, crying. The statue of Dionysus was placed on a wooden cart and wheeled through the crowd. As it passed, people swore the carved eyes glowed. Children threw flowers. Women wept tears of joy. Men bowed, touched by something they couldn't name. Then the drinking began. Clay cups clinked. Wine splashed over fingers. Music pierced the sky. Poets recited verses until their voices collapsed. Dancers leapt like flames. Masks were passed out, smiling masks, laughing masks, masks of terror and longing, because Dionysus was the god who revealed the truth hidden behind every face. And as night swallowed the city, something shifted. The line between mortal and divine grew thin. People spoke to invisible companions. They swore they felt Dionysus' breath on their neck. And sometimes, they were right. Because the Greeks believed Dionysus walked the earth during his festivals. Not as lightning, not as wrath, but as a whisper in the mind, a pulse in the blood, a shadow dancing at the edge of a torch's glow. But the wildest worship didn't happen in cities. It happened in the mountains. The Maenads, women chosen by Dionysus, abandoned their homes during festivals. Mothers left cradles rocking in silence. Wives vanished from dinner tables. Daughters slipped out windows in the dead of night. They wore fawn skins, carried ivy-twisted staffs, and painted their arms with wine. They marched into the wilderness, into caves and ravines lit only by moonlight. There they danced in frenzy so intense that time shattered. They chanted hymns older than civilization. They ran barefoot over thorns without bleeding. Some said they became more than human, something divine, something terrifying. For Dionysus wasn't just the god of joy. He was also the god of madness. And the Greeks knew these two forces were not opposites, but twins. Every god has a gentle side, he murmurs. And every god has a wrath. Pentheus ruled Thebes with an iron devotion to order. Law, discipline, logic, these were his pillars. When word spread that women were fleeing into the mountains to join Dionysian rites, Pentheus was furious. He believed the gods' worship encouraged chaos, rebellion, and shame. He arrested Dionysus, who had disguised himself as a mortal, and mocked him. He ordered his soldiers to whip the Maenads, to drag them home in chains. But you cannot jail ecstasy. You cannot punish the wild. You cannot command a god. The chains fell off by themselves. The palace shook like an animal waking from sleep. Pentheus grew paranoid, trembling, confused. Dionysus whispered into his mind. Suggested he should see the rituals for himself. Suggested he disguise himself as a woman and spy on the Maenads. Pentheus agreed. And in the mountains the Maenads saw him, not as a king, not as a man, but as a wild animal sent by Dionysus. They tore him apart with their bare hands. His own mother delivered the final blow. When she returned to Thebes, carrying his severed head, smiling in divine madness, the entire city understood. Dionysus was not a god to defy, not because he was cruel, but because he was inevitable. He represented the side of humanity that cannot be chained forever. Emotion, instinct, desire, chaos, dreams, madness, liberation. Pentheus tried to silence that part of himself, and it destroyed him. Do you understand now? The Greeks did not worship Dionysus to escape reality. They worshipped him to confront it. Because wine was more than a drink. Was a mirror. A mirror that showed you who you were beneath the masks, beneath the titles, beneath the rules society carved into your skin. Wine revealed truths sober minds feared. Wine loosened grief locked behind rib cages. Wine allowed joy to spill without judgment. Wine turned strangers into companions, enemies into brothers, and quiet hearts into poets. To worship Dionysus was to release the self, completely. To unravel the knots tied by duty and expectation. To surrender control without shame. To feel everything intensely and fearlessly. The Greeks understood the human soul was not made of marble, but of storms. And Dionysus was the god of storms within. Civilization is built on order, on laws, on restraint. But humans are not creatures of order alone. He points toward the distant mountains where moonlight clings like silver dust. That is why the Greeks worshipped a god of wine, he whispers. Because without him their world would be stone, silent, cold, lifeless. Dionysus brought madness, but also art. He brought chaos, but also creativity. He brought danger, but also beauty. In his festivals, theater was born. Tragedy, comedy, poetry. The masks, the chorus, the structure of storytelling. All were born from his rituals. Without Dionysus there would be no stage, no drama, no Western storytelling. His influence carved itself into the DNA of civilization. And still his spirit lingers. Every time a cup of wine is raised at a feast, every time music pulls the soul from the body, every time laughter erupts unexpectedly, every time a human shatters under emotion, every time desire burns hotter than reason, Dionysus lives again. Not in temples, not in statues, but in the hidden chambers of the human heart. And as the villagers sit in silence, they hear it, faint, distant, eternal. The echo of a drum, a whisper of flutes, the sigh of vines curling in moonlight. Somewhere the god of wine walks the earth still, waiting for the next soul brave enough to taste his truth.